We've all seen James Bond's Q hand over an exploding pen. We laugh it off as Hollywood magic. But the truth is, the real-life CIA's Office of Technical Service was often weirder, darker, and more ambitious than anything you've seen in a cinema. They once spent $20 million trying to turn a cat into a cyborg. Or they built a gun that causes natural heart attacks using frozen poison. They even used a 19th century musical genius to build a bug that didn't require any batteries, and it stayed hidden in the US ambassador's office for 7 years. This isn't fiction. Everything I said is declassified and real. Hi guys, welcome to our channel. Today, we will be raiding the vaults of the CIA's Office of Technical Service, the real-life version of Q's lab, and pulling out 12 projects that prove that the Cold War was basically a mad scientist playground with an unlimited budget and zero adult supervision. Let's look at these 12 stories. The lipstick pistol. It's 1965. You're a guard at an American checkpoint in West Berlin. Every single day, you search hundreds of people trying to cross the border. You search bags, coats, and briefcases. You've seen everything. Or you think you've seen everything. But have you checked the lipstick? The Kiss of Death. That was its actual name. It was a single-shot 4.5mm pistol engineered by the KGB operatives and hidden inside a completely ordinary lipstick tube. It had chrome finish and twist-up mechanism. From the outside, it was totally unrecognizable from anything you'd find in a woman's handbag. Here's how it worked. Instead of lipstick rising from the tube, there was a live round at the tip. Twist the bottom, and a small internal hammer strikes the primer and fires the weapon. One shot. It was silent and deadly at close range. The KGB specifically designed it to be carried by the female agents crossing the West German border, because border guards in the 1960s simply didn't search women's cosmetics. It wasn't hiding in some sort of secret compartment or behind a false panel. It was hiding in the most overlooked object imaginable. The first known example was discovered at an American checkpoint in West Berlin in 1965, and only because one unusually thorough guard examined it more carefully than the most. That exact pistol is now on display at the International Spy Museum in Washington, D.C. It is genuinely beautiful craftsmanship, and it could put a bullet in you from across the room. Now you might be thinking, a single shot? That's not much of a use in a real fight. And you're right, this weapon was never designed for a firefight. It was designed for one moment, one opportunity that you don't get twice. In the world of Cold War espionage, sometimes one shot was all you needed, and if the target never noticed the weapon until it was too late, you were already gone. Disappearing ink pen. Before we move on, I need to ask you something. How do you pass a secret message through enemy territory when your bag gets searched at every checkpoint, your phone is tapped, and every letter you send gets read before it even reaches its destination? You hide the message in plain sight. Invisible ink is probably the oldest trick in the intelligence book. We're talking ancient Greece and Roman generals. The American Revolution, Benjamin Franklin's own spy network used it. But the Cold War took this ancient concept and turned it into a precise science. The basic setup: you write your normal, innocent message in a regular ink, a shopping list or a letter to your cousin. Then, using a separate pen or brush, you write the real message underneath in a chemical compound completely invisible to the naked eye. How invisible? Totally. No shimmer, no residue, nothing. To anyone searching your bag, the document is completely ordinary. But here's where it gets interesting. Cold War agencies developed multiple generations of invisible ink, each harder to detect than the last. Early versions were simple. They used organic compounds like lemon juice, milk, or onion juice that turned brown when exposed to heat. If you held the paper over a candle, the message appeared. It was effective, but not secure enough for a serious operation. By the Cold War era, agencies were using chemically activated compounds, formulas that require a specific reactive chemical to reveal the hidden text. Without knowing the exact developer, you could heat it, shine a light on it, expose it to anything you had, and still see nothing. Some CIA-era formulas only reacted under specific wavelengths of ultraviolet light. Others required a particular chemical solvent. And most importantly, the developer was always kept separate, carried in a different location by a different person. Think about the architecture of that system. The message exists in two pieces, the ink and the key to read it. Separate the two, and neither piece is useful on its own. This wasn't improvised, it was systematic, tradecraft refined over centuries, then pushed to its technical limits by some of the best chemists in the world during the most dangerous standoff in human history. And it worked for years. The Piston tip umbrella. September 7, 1978, London, on Waterloo Bridge. A Bulgarian writer named Georgi Markov is waiting for a bus. He's a dissident, someone who publicly criticized the communist Bulgarian government and paid for it by losing everything. His career, his country, even his safety. He'd fled to London, where he worked for the BBC World Service, broadcasting messages back into Eastern Europe. The regime had already tried to kill him twice before. That morning, he feels a sudden sharp sting in the back of his right thigh. Something like a bee. He looks down and nothing. He looks up. A man holding an umbrella is walking away. Looking back briefly, mumbling an apology for bumping into him. Georgi Markov goes to work. By that evening, he has a high fever. 3 days later, and he's dead. During the autopsy, doctors find something remarkable. A tiny platinum pellet, just 1.7 millimeters across, drilled with 2 microscopic holes. Inside those holes, ricin, a biological toxin extracted from castor beans. No antidote existed at the time. A lethal dose is smaller than a grain of salt. The pellet had been fired into his leg by a modified pneumatic umbrella. The tip had been machined into a precision micro-launcher powered by a small compressed gas cartridge hidden in the handle. In the noise and crowd of a busy London bridge, it was completely silent and completely undetectable. The operation is now confirmed as a Bulgarian state security assassination, with KGB technical support. The Soviets designed the weapon, and the Bulgarians pulled the trigger. Here's what makes this story so enduring. It was hiding behind the most mundane object imaginable, an umbrella, on a rainy day in Britain. If you wrote this scene for a thriller, your editor would tell you that it was too convenient. But that's exactly why it worked. The best weapon isn't the most advanced one, it's the one nobody thinks to look for. Georgi Markov's case remains one of the most notorious assassinations of the entire Cold War, and a permanent reminder that in this world, the most dangerous thing in the room is sometimes the most boring. The explosive seashell. Let's talk about Fidel Castro. By the most conservative estimates, There were over 600 documented attempts to assassinate Castro, organized or inspired by the CIA between the 1960s and the 1990s. 600. That's more than one per month for 50 years. The methods range from poisoned cigars to a wetsuit lined with tuberculosis bacteria. There was a plan involving a ballpoint pen converted into a hypodermic needle. Plans involving his bodyguards, his lovers, and even his doctors. But today, we're focusing on the one that stands completely alone. The explosive seashell. Castro was a scuba diver. He frequently dived in the waters around Cuba, often without heavy security, because how exactly do you secure an entire ocean? CIA planners, and I want you to really sit with this, CIA planners seriously proposed finding a large, unusually beautiful seashell, packing it with explosives, and placing it on the seafloor in an area where Castro was known to dive. The hope: Castro would notice it, be drawn to it out of curiosity, pick it up, and it would detonate. I want you to notice what they were betting on here. They were counting on the leader of a communist nation, a man who had survived hundreds of assassination attempts, a former lawyer, a revolutionary, a man of extraordinary tactical intelligence and paranoia, to pick up a random shiny thing off the ocean floor, like a child at the beach. The plan was formally reviewed, and then, according to declassified documents, it was rejected, not primarily on moral grounds, not on strategic grounds, but because it was considered, quote, logistically impractical. The seashell couldn't be made sufficiently attractive to guarantee Castro would pick it up above all others on the seafloor. Logistically impractical. That was the sticking point. Not, this is insane, or this will never work. Just, the seashell wasn't pretty enough. Your tax dollars, ladies and gentlemen. The insect helicopter. This next one is not a gadget from a movie. It's not a concept that never left the drawing board. It is a real, functional, hand-painted flying surveillance drone, and it was built by the CIA in the 1970s. The insect helicopter was developed by the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology. It was a miniature vehicle designed to be, and this is the key word, indistinguishable from a common dragonfly. Not just similar, indistinguishable. It was hand-painted by the CIA's technicians to replicate dragonfly wing patterns, body coloring, and proportions down to the millimeter. From any reasonable distance, it looked like an insect, because it was supposed to be an insect. How did it fly? This is where the engineering becomes genuinely extraordinary. The insectohopter was powered by a miniature fluidic oscillator, a device that uses streams of pressurized gas to create oscillating movement with no traditional motor or rotating parts. This oscillator drove the wings up and down at the precise frequency needed to generate lift and forward thrust, mimicking actual insects' flight mechanics rather than conventional propeller-driven flight. Excess gas vented from the rear of the body, providing additional thrust. A microjet engine in the tail of a fake dragonfly. Inside the body cavity, a miniature listening device capable of transmitting audio to CIA operators at a safe distance. The plan: deploy it into a closed environment, a room, a courtyard, or a garden. Let it land near the target and listen. It was revealed to the public for the first time in December 2003 at the CIA Museum. Additional technical details were declassified in 2015 and again in 2020. So, why didn't it make it to the field? Crosswinds. The insectohopter was too light, too small, and too aerodynamically delicate to maintain stable flight in real outdoor conditions. Any breeze above a certain threshold would push it off course. In a laboratory, perfect. In an actual city with actual weather, too unpredictable to be reliable. The project was shelved. But the CIA's own website now holds up the Insectohopter as an example of the creative, boundary-pushing thinking that defines their science division. They're not embarrassed by it, they're proud of it. And honestly, they should be. In the 1970s, before personal computers, before modern microelectronics, before GPS or digital sensors, they built a working robotic spy dragonfly. The wind stopped them, not the concept. The pipe with a secret mouthpiece. Sometimes the best spy gadget isn't the weapon, it isn't a drone, it isn't a cutting-edge electronics. Sometimes it's just a pipe. Among the declassified projects in CIA archives was a standard-looking tobacco pipe whose mouthpiece concealed a hidden cavity, precisely sized to hold a rolled strip of microfilm or a folded message. From the outside, the pipe worked in every normal way. It smelled like tobacco, it burned like tobacco. An agent could smoke it at a border crossing, at a cafe, in a waiting room. There was nothing to see and no reason to look closer. But the mouthpiece, when unscrewed, revealed a compartment holding the kind of intelligence that, if found, would mean immediate arrest, interrogation, and almost certainly something much worse. Think about the psychology of this. A man smoking a pipe in mid-20th century Europe was completely invisible. It was the era of pipe smokers. It was normal. It was expected. Nobody looks twice at a man with a pipe, and nobody, not a border guard, not a secret policeman, not anyone, thinks to ask him to take it apart. The genius of Cold War concealment wasn't always about technical complexity. It was about social invisibility. The best hiding place is the one that makes the searcher feel foolish for even considering it. A pipe with classified state secrets rolled inside the mouthpiece, passing through the checkpoint in plain sight. Bulletproof headphones. Every other gadget in this video is about going on the offensive. Hidden weapons, concealed microphones, silent drones. This one is about staying alive. In the CIA museum, there is a pair of communication headphones that by any reasonable measure should not exist, meaning the person wearing them should not have survived. In 2009, in Afghanistan, a CIA officer was leading an indigenous team on a pursuit operation, tracking a high-ranking enemy combatant cornered in a valley. When the enemy realized they were trapped, they opened fire. 2 rifle bullets grazed his headset, one on each side, just inches from the officer's face. The headphones absorbed both impacts. The officer survived. He then called in an airstrike that ended the engagement. These were not specifically armored headphones. They were not designed to stop bullets. They were standard communication equipment, the same kind any officer might wear in the field on any given day. They just happened to be exactly in the right place. The CIA keeps them in their museum, not as a gadget story, but as a survival story. A reminder of the fact that sometimes the difference between alive and not is measured in centimeters. The thing. Now we come to the most interesting item on this list. Not because it's the most violent, not because it's the most absurd, because it is by any measure one of the most brilliant pieces of engineering in the history of human intelligence. A device so far ahead of its time that when American engineers finally figured out what they were looking at, it reportedly left the room in stunned silence. And for 7 years it sat on a wall in a diplomat's office while everyone walked past it every single day. August 4th, 1945. World War II is almost over. The United States and Soviet Union are still technically allies, or at least performing that role. A delegation of Soviet schoolchildren presents a beautifully hand-carved wooden replica of the Great Seal of the United States. The eagle, the shield, the stars, to William Averill Harriman, the US ambassador to the Soviet Union. It's a thoughtful gift, well-made, culturally appropriate. Harriman hangs it on the wall of his study in SEASHELL House, his official Moscow residence, where he hosts meetings, dinners, and private conversations with American officials. Inside the seal, the thing. Designed by Lev Terman, also known as Leon Theremin, the Soviet physicist who invented the theremin musical instrument. The thing was a passive resonant cavity microphone. Here is why it was revolutionary. It had no battery, no internal power source, no active electronic components, no wires leading anywhere, no transmitter broadcasting on any detectable frequency, nothing that any conventional counter-surveillance sweep of the era would find, because all those sweeps were designed to detect active electronic signals. The thing produced none. It was completely dormant until activated from outside. Here's how it worked. Soviet agents parked near SEASHELL House would direct a focus radio beam of a specific frequency at the wall where the seal hung. This beam would excite the resonant cavity inside the device, essentially waking it up. The device would then modulate the reflected beam based on sound waves hitting its internal membrane from inside the room, voices, conversations, entire meetings, and retransmit that modulated signal back to the operators outside. No power needed, no maintenance, no detectable signature, just physics. This is the CIA's own description of the device. They now openly discuss it on their website, because 60 years later, it is still considered one of the most elegant surveillance solutions ever conceived. It was undetectable by any counterintelligence method available at the time. The only reason it was eventually found, in 1952, 7 years after it was planted, was through a completely accidental observation by a British signals officer who noticed the reflection anomaly he could not explain. And when American engineers finally decoded what they were looking at, they realized it wasn't just a clever gadget. It was a conceptual breakthrough, a direct predecessor to RFID technology, passive sensing, the same principle that now runs your contactless bank card, your car key fob, your transit pass. Lev Terman, the man who gave the world an instrument you play without touching, and a spy device that listens without power, was operating at the absolute frontier of what was physically possible. A gift, on a wall, listening to everything, for 7 years. Project Acoustic Kitty. What if you could make a cat spy for you? What if you spent $20 million trying? Project Acoustic Kitty is one of the most genuinely, bewilderingly real things the CIA has ever confirmed doing. It was a program run by the Directorate of Science and Technology in the 1960s. The concept: surgically transform an ordinary domestic cat into a mobile surveillance platform capable of eavesdropping on Soviet officials in outdoor settings, parks, gardens, and public plazas, where human agents couldn't easily operate without attracting attention. The surgery was extensive. A veterinary surgeon implanted a miniature microphone inside the cat's ear canal. A small radio transmitter was embedded at the base of its skull. A thin wire antenna was threaded through the fur along the length of its tail. The whole system was designed to activate when the cat came within range of a target, transmitting audio back to the CIA operators at a safe distance. But there was an immediate problem. Cats are hungry. During initial training, whenever the cat got hungry, which was constantly, it would simply abandon whatever it was doing and wander off to find food. Structurally incapable of prioritizing the CIA's surveillance objectives over its own stomach. Solution: a secondary surgery. The cat's hunger drive was neurologically altered to reduce the distraction of hunger during operations. I want to be very clear about what just happened in that sentence. The CIA performed brain surgery on a cat to make it a more focused employee. The cat cost approximately $20 million to prepare, train, and deploy. According to Victor Marchetti, a former CIA officer who later disclosed the program publicly, the figure is not an exaggeration. The first operational mission eavesdropped on two men sitting on a bench outside the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C. The cat was released from a van nearby. It crossed the street and was immediately struck by a taxi. The program was discontinued. The CIA's internal review memo, later obtained through declassification, reportedly concluded that the concept was, quote, $20 million for a cat. The CIA now acknowledges Acoustic Kitty through their own public communications, including a story on CIA.gov about animals and espionage, in which they note that many animal programs failed for, and I love this phrasing, technical, logistical, or behavioral reasons. Next, the heart attack gun. September 17, 1975. Washington, D.C. A Senate Intelligence Committee hearing, the Church Committee, publicly examining CIA operations for the first time in history. CIA Director William Colby is called to present a specific weapon. He places it on the table in front of the senators. It gets immediately nicknamed by the press the heart attack gun. Here's what it was: a modified battery-powered pistol that fired a dart. The dart was approximately the diameter of a human hair, nearly invisible in flight. It carried a payload of shellfish toxin, a compound derived from certain marine organisms that is extremely lethal in microscopic doses. On impact with skin, the dart caused no more sensation than a mosquito bite. It would penetrate the outer layer of skin, dissolve almost immediately, leaving no entry wound, no foreign material, nothing for an autopsy to find, and release the toxin directly into the bloodstream. The toxin caused cardiac arrest within minutes. To any examining physician, the death appeared completely natural, a heart attack, nothing more. No dart, no toxin residue, no entry wound, no evidence of any kind. A weapon that kills people and then erases its own existence. Demonstrated live on the record in front of elected officials in 1975. The senators present were, by all accounts, visibly shaken. Here's the question that has never been definitively answered. How many times was this weapon actually used? It was built, it was operational, it was demonstrated in front of Congress, which means it wasn't theoretical, it was ready. Were there cold deaths attributed to heart attacks, to natural causes that were something else entirely? We don't know, and we may never know. But the next project is the pigeon with the camera. Before satellites, before drones, before any airborne surveillance technology, we take for granted today. There were pigeons. Not a metaphor, not an euphemism, actual pigeons with actual cameras working for the CIA. The use of pigeon photography actually goes back much further than the Cold War, all the way to the late 19th century, when a German apothecary named Julius Neubrunner patented a miniature camera designed to be carried by the carrier pigeons and triggered automatically by a pneumatic timer. The images he got were surprisingly good. The CIA version was more refined. A miniature, lightweight camera was strapped to the chest of a trained carrier pigeon using a small harness. The camera was equipped with a timer that triggered the shutter at irregular intervals during flight, capturing sequential aerial photographs of whatever the pigeon flew over. The birds were trained to fly specific routes, from a release point to a home loft, passing over targets of interest along the way. Because pigeons are instinctively directional and return reliably to their loft, their flight path could be roughly predicted and aimed. The CIA Museum holds one of these cameras. According to the agency, pigeon aerial photography actually worked, producing usable reconnaissance images in genuine operational conditions. Think about that for a second. No engine noise, no radar signature, no flight plan to file, no pilot to capture or interrogate. Just a bird doing what birds naturally do, carrying a camera nobody in the world thought to look for. The CIA's own published account notes that birds and bird-inspired technology have been a recurring theme in intelligence innovation, precisely because they access spaces humans can't, and they attract no attention whatsoever. The pigeon has been delivering messages for thousands of years. In the Cold War, it delivered photographs. And finally, the oldest trick in the spy's handbook, and quite possibly the most enduring: dead drops. The principle is deceptively simple. Two agents need to exchange something: documents, microfilm, instructions, money, without ever meeting face to face. Every meeting is a risk. Every phone call is a risk. Every digital message is a risk. The dead drop eliminates all of it. One agent places the material inside a concealed container at a pre-agreed location and leaves. The other agent arrives later, could be hours or days, retrieves it, leaves something in return if needed, and leaves. The two might never meet. They may not even know each other's real names. The CIA's museum dead drop spike is a masterpiece of disguise. It's a small, slightly pointed metal container designed to look exactly like an ordinary cemetery spike, the kind used to hold flowers arrangements at the grave. You could walk past it in a park or a cemetery 100 times and never think twice. But it unscrews, and inside, a hollow cavity precisely large enough for a roll of microfilm, a folded note, or a strip of code. Now, how do you know when the drop has been loaded? How do you signal that material is waiting, or that it's been retrieved? This is where tradecraft gets elaborate and genuinely fascinating. Chalk marks on a post box, thumb tag in a telephone pole, a specific arrangement of stones on a windowsill, a car parked at a particular angle on a particular block. These are called brush signals, tiny, unremarkable changes in the environment that mean absolutely nothing to anyone except the one person who knows what to look for. The Czech Security Services Archive, which holds records from the communist-era secret police, has documented in remarkable detail how dead drop networks operated across Eastern European cities during the Cold War. According to their records, a secret police manual from around 1951 describes the ideal drop location as hidden in tree roots, bases of remote monuments, park benches, road posts, walls, sewers, and cemeteries, placed in metal boxes or sealed bottles. These sites operated for years, some for decades, in places ordinary people walked past every single day without a second glance. Dead drops are not history. They are still used. by intelligence agencies around the world, right now, today, in parks and cemeteries and city squares in every major capital on Earth. The method is unchanged. The locations shift. The principle is timeless. The best communication is the one that looks like nothing at all. So, the next time you walk through a park and you notice a small metal spike near a bench, or a chalk mark on a post box, or a stone that seems slightly out of place, it's probably nothing. Lipstick pistols, invisible ink, a man killed by an umbrella on a rainy London bridge, an explosive seashell that assumed Castro was curious, a robotic dragonfly defeated by the wind, a pipe hiding state secrets in the mouthpiece, headphones that stopped 2 bullets by a matter of centimeters, a wooden gift that listened for 7 years with no power source, a cat that cost $20 million and lasted 30 seconds, a weapon that causes heart attacks and dissolves its own evidence, pigeons taking aerial photographs, and a global network of hollow spikes hiding in plain sight in every city on Earth. These weren't movies, these were real Monday mornings. The Cold War was the most creative, most paranoid, most consequential arms race in the history of human intelligence. And most of it happened in the shadows, in lab coats, in embassy basements, and safe house backrooms. Which leaves one question permanently open. What is in the vault right now, classified, funded, and operational, that we won't find out about for another 50 years? Drop your theories in the comments. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe, because this was only the beginning. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and if anyone ever hands you a beautiful carved wooden gift, check it before you hang it on the wall.